Welcome to War Room Impeachment, 9 November, year of our Lord, 2019. This is episode 21. Remember, on War Room Impeachment, we are here every day, 7 days a week, until the acquittal of Donald J. Trump. We're going to be here for the entire impeachment process in the House. We're going to talk about the scheduling of that in a second, and then we will cover the trial of Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, his trial for impeachment, which is the impeachment process under Nancy Pelosi. And we'll talk about this, Raheem, in a second, from our epic interview with Mayor Rudy Giuliani yesterday. That's still breaking news. It was on Brett Baier yesterday. Very thankful to the Fox folks and the Brett Baier special report highlighted the mayor going after Adam Schiff. Lot to get through today. Raheem Kassam, the Nigel Farage's right-hand man. Remember, Brexit and the Trump revolt of 2016 are inextricably linked. The rise of UKIP was analogous to the rise of the Trump movement. Nigel Farage, a fire-breathing populist and nationalist. And Raheem was his right-hand man through those early years and the rise of it, and eventually came back and was the managing editor of Breitbart London, which Nigel said the day after Brexit, if Breitbart London had not existed, that with the how weak the Daily Telegraph had gotten, how wet I guess you guys call it, there would not be a Brexit. And speaking of, it's been in the media that a certain Stephen K. Bannon is actually looking at purchasing the Daily Telegraph. And so, which is supposedly for sale from the Barkley family. We don't know that yet. There seems to be a little controversy there. A lot to go through today. This is the third anniversary, folks. Two big anniversaries today, 3 and 30. It's the third anniversary. At 2:30 in the morning, this morning, the Associated Press, 3 years ago, declared Donald J. Trump the 45th President of the United States. Hillary Clinton very graciously called him a few minutes afterwards. We had a deal worked out. Kellyanne Conway, our campaign manager, and Robbie Mook had a deal worked out about as soon as AP called it, there would be a call within a few minutes, and it was. Hillary Clinton was very gracious, called, had a short conversation with then President-elect Trump, and he went on the stage, and we started the whole process 3 years ago today. In addition, 30 years ago, kind of the end of the 20th century. We had a short 20th century from 1914, from August of 1914 to November of 1989. The bloodiest century in mankind's history. I don't know, Raheem, is it 250 million people killed in wars, famines, things associated with the great wars of the 20th century that started in Sarajevo, moved to the trenches of the Western Front. Modern technology, converged with human nature and led to a killing field, an onslaught, a catastrophe. They will refer to this back, hundreds of years from now, they refer back to this as a new dark age, 1914 to 1989. The Berlin Wall came down and freedom came. And Raheem, you were part of a incredible celebration last night from a group I think we got to start promoting more. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, last night I was very honored to be invited to the Victims of Communism Memorial Gala last night. This is a very, very affirmatively bipartisan organization, one of the very few real bipartisan organizations left here in Washington, D.C., that brings people together, not just to commemorate, obviously it was the 30th anniversary commemoration and celebration of the Berlin Wall coming down, but also to redouble efforts in terms of fighting communism and fighting the socialism that leads to that totalitarian mindset. And there was, while it was a bipartisan event, there was a very clear message from the stage last night, from the organizers, from Marion Smith, the head of the Victims of Communism organization, and from the speakers up there, who, without saying it outright, they got as close as you could to saying it outright, talked about this renewed socialism, hard leftism, verging on communism that's coming out of some elements of the Democratic Party. And as I say, they didn't say the words Democratic Party, but they were very clear about what was going on.
So look, Brexit, you're having an election on December 12th. We're going to talk about the schedule for the impeachment of Donald J. Trump. This will be, I think, at the end of the public hearings and the beginning of the judiciary drafting the articles of impeachment against President Trump. These are inextricably linked. And now this is, I said, we're in 1936. You can see on the Eurasian landmass between China and Iran and Turkey. Oh, Erdogan's in the White House. I guess we're going to have to talk about that a little more on Monday, on Veterans Day.
Are his guys going to rough anybody up again?
We'll get to all that. But here's the point. The impeachment and the impeachment process is inextricably linked with all of this. The cultural Marxism, remember, the communists lost in the economics, but they're winning on the cultural Marxism, the nihilism, the destruction of the Judeo-Christian West, of the tenets that underpin the, 5,000 years of civilization that we've had that is, and this is not a clash of civilization, particularly the Chinese. The Chinese have taken on a form of state capitalism. The Chinese Communist Party is the great enemy of the United States, the great enemy of free people throughout the world, and you can see that in Hong Kong, and I hope last night, I've actually started to meet with people already to try to push. One of my objectives for next year is to make sure that the Hong Kong dissidents, the Hong Kong insurgents, these young patriots under the age of 30 years old are nominated for the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize next year, because what they are doing is what happened in this country in 1775 and 1776. And this is exactly inextricably linked with this impeachment process.
Yeah, there was absolutely last night a very, very solid expression of solidarity with the protesters in Hong Kong. There were little grab bags at the end of the night which contained a little piece of the Berlin Wall for everybody, but also contained Hong Kong solidarity stickers and things for people to actually express. Because as you know, what happened recently in Washington, D.C. at the Wizards game with people wearing the Free Hong Kong shirts,
yes.
with people Google Uyghurs and all of those shirts,
yes.
And it's being shut down.
This is in. People should understand that Brooklyn Nets is owned by a guy from the CCP. The real owner, the real driver of Alibaba is not Jack Ma.
Yeah.
It's actually the owner of the center in I think it's the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and the owner of the Nets. And you see that the students for a free Tibet. You see the House Christians. You see the underground Catholic Church. You see the rest of the Hong Kong posse. These young people, Chinese Americans and expatriate Chinese and Tibetans at the Nets game with their free Hong Kong T-shirts on. It's amazing. Okay. Raheem, you're driving this train. I'm just throwing for my brilliant commentary. I do want to say, and this is going to be not a humble brag. I think we'll just do a brag. And it's not about Bloomberg. It's not about bringing the Bidens to the Senate to testify. It's not of those called shots. And we'll do another called shot. I think in the first week of this broadcast, right? We're here on the John Fredericks Radio Network. I want to give a hat tip to John Fredericks. He made this happen. This whole War Room Impeachment, our podcast and live radio show happened. It is about the date that Nancy Pelosi will actually bring the articles of impeachment to the floor for a floor vote, and it'll be a roll call vote. It looks like right now, I believe, it's going to be Saturday, December 21st, and this is a little bit reiterated in this Hill article. Can you pull that up, Raheem? I want to go through this in some level of detail. I'm going to quote from it as I pull it up on my device. The Hill had an article last night, obviously sourced from Democrats, but it talks about now we're getting now into process. And remember, this is both a process story and it's a content story. What the president keeps saying, we won the process argument, right? But Matt Gaetz and that brilliant strategic move a couple of Thursdays ago when he went down to the SCIF and showed America this was a star chamber, that Adam Schiff was running a star chamber, and this was Nancy Pelosi's Napoleonic strategy, and she's a brilliant strategist of march divided, fight united. They were moving down many paths at the same time in secret hearings. We could only have parts of transcripts, and then they were going to converge on a I believe, a report, then vote on that report and have articles of impeachment on Trump before Thanksgiving, pass it to the Senate for the trial, and actually have his trial wrap up before Christmas. Gates was able to slow this down and to now get it. She had to call it audible. It's now at the public. They're starting to mark. Now the president is staying the lawn, and we're going to talk about messaging. And I know we've got from our War Room team up over there to our left is working on it. There's some big concerns about the unity of message in between the president and his supporters and the House and whatever. It's the Democrats are moving down very concise, and you see this in the headlines and all the mainstream media we have right here today. No doubt about it. A quid pro quo. Officials testify. Raheem's going to get in that in a second. But theirs is very simple. arms for dirt, right? They get a simple thing and they're going, ours is still, it's somewhere we believe that this is just a policy debate. And the more granular, the president did say yesterday, there should be no televised debates. Now, his concept was that the whole thing's a hoax.
Hearings.
The whole hearings should not be public hearings. Yeah. It's a total hoax. And so that's one aspect of it. We happen to believe that that's going to happen everywhere. Anyway, it's inevitable. They're going to have these. And we shift to the next phase on Wednesday, where they will have Ambassador Taylor. They're obviously going to start with they think their best, West Point grad, 101st, 82nd Airborne, fought in Vietnam, served for 50 years. Mike Pompeo hired him, right? They're going to start with Taylor. They're also going to have Undersecretary Kent, I believe, correct? Kent is going to go to that first day. Right now, nothing booked on Thursday. Then on a Friday, I believe they're going to have the former ambassador, right, that was fired or let go. She's going to be on Friday. And then they said they're going to bring everybody else. And right now, it looks like they intend to wrap up at least what they're saying, the hearings on the Friday before Thanksgiving, go on Thanksgiving break, come back, have a report drafted, and then go to the next phase, which is to pass to the Nadler's Judiciary Committee, which will then work on the articles of impeachment, may have additional hearings. So right now we've got phase 2 starts Wednesday, and we're going to have some special announcement, compliments of the John Fredericks Radio Network. We may actually be going to 2-a-days, starting on certain of these days, so that we can capture in the morning what is the morning call and focus on what's going to happen, and then afterwards Raheem and the team can summarize what's there. Remember, this is about granularity. This is about detail. This is about substance, right? They're trying to impeach and trying to reverse an election. And I'll tell you, 3 years ago today at 2:30, Donald Trump was called by AP to be the president-elect of the United States, and at 2:32, right outside Trump Tower, the resistance started. The nullification project started that day. The press was so in shock. Because you remember, if people forget, I said this in the speech I gave the other night at the Yale Club to the New York Young Republicans, which is a great organization founded in 1911, the great era of institution building in our country, to say that, remember, they have worked to nullify this from day one, that the progressive left understands something that the Republican establishment does not believe about Donald Trump. They understand he's a transformative president and a historic figure. Orange man bad, right? They must remove Donald Trump. They must beat him at any if they have to remove him from office this way, if they have to blunt the arc of his presidency, they will do it. That's why Michael Bloomberg is now in the race. I believe Hillary Clinton's going to get in the race. The necessity of having, you see, in Hill today, they're talking about it was centrist policies in Kentucky and Virginia that won, right? And we're going to see tonight President Trump is actually going down, I believe, to the Alabama LSU football game. He's going to be, I don't know if he's going to Louisiana. They vote today in Louisiana, I believe. Today's the day they vote for governor, and that's a hotly contested seat. So this is all about the politics of 2020. What they're trying to do, if they can't remove him, and, all likelihood they're not going to win the trial in the Senate. You heard the other day on this show how deep, that's a real trial. Right now, this is kind of like a grand jury, though not totally like a grand jury. I would say this is, if you think of the structure of law and order, this is the grand jury part. We're going to go to a trial, and the trial is going to have, as we had the other day, Dave Urban, right, who won Pennsylvania for us at the head of the ticket. Dave Urban was chief of staff for Arlen Specter back in the Clinton trial, and he says, hey, this is a trial, own evidentiary patterns, everything. So they're talking about now, how are they not going to intrude into the 2020 primary of the Democrats? You're going to have Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, all sitting as jurors, not going to be out in Iowa, not going to be caucus, not going to be knocking on doors, not going to be doing small coffees. February 3rd is the Iowa caucus. So if nothing else out there in our audience, and this is where you have to come together, you have to get focused if you're part of the Trump revolution, or if you're just a Democrat out there in this radio network and on our podcast, and we know we have a lot of Democrats, particularly a lot of people here in D.C., but a lot of Democrats listening to this. This is a great civics lesson of nothing else. This is we tip our hat to England being the oldest democracy, or I guess maybe Greece is the oldest democracy, our mother country, the United Kingdom.
The mother of all parliaments.
Mother of all parliaments. It's going to go to the greatest deliberative body in the world, the United States Senate. But this is history. We're moving in. We're starting on Wednesday, only the third time in the history of the Republic that we have actually had formal proceedings to impeach a president of the United States. I don't include Nixon's because that was Judiciary Committee, and he punched out before it really started. So history in the making. Let's go. Anything else on the Hill? I think there's a couple of quotes in there that I wanted to pull, but it's specifically from Democrats to say we're entering a new phase of this. And they believe, this is an unsourced quote from the Hill, the Democrats believe that starting Wednesday, they will make their case to the American public, that this was a quid pro quo, this was arms for dirt, that this was extortion, this was a small beleaguered ally in front of the Russian Goliath, and that we withheld the weapons, particularly American money for American weapons, Javelin anti-tank missiles, that would have secured and continue to secure their freedom. And that's the stakes they're going to say, and that Donald Trump, for his own personal political gain, his own obsession with the Bidens, held this back. And, of course, the president, I think, is, and I believe this, the more detail we get into, you see it's a difference in the foreign policy of how the unelected bureaucrats, and we're not questioning the honor or integrity of these people, but the unelected bureaucrats that believe in the Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, Barack Obama, John McCain, a Republican establishment, Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush, the America as the global humanitarian expeditionary force that will be everywhere all the time, and that NATO, in EU, in the Gulf Emirates, and the littoral nations around the South China Sea, in the Northwest Pacific, Japan and Korea, are all protectorates of the United States. That this rules-based international order, all the burden falls in the United States. We have trade deals and capital markets and all that, but the $1 trillion defense bill, and yes, it's $1 trillion. Don't let the phony accounting they vote on, the CR they're going to vote on to keep the government open on November 20th. Don't believe the phony accounting that says it's $780 billion. That's $1 trillion. And it's the deplorables. It's people in this audience as kids. It's the deplorables kids who are at the 38th parallel. It's their kids in Korea. It's their kids on the ships patrolling the South China Sea. It's their kids on patrol today in the Hindu Kush. It's their kids up in Syria. It's their kids down on the Eastern Front in the Ukraine. It is the deplorables, sons and daughters. They have both. The deplorables are all in. They have both blood and treasure. And guess what they decided? In Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Iowa, on November 8th of 2019, because there could not be any person in our country that articulated the status quo of that better than Hillary Clinton, one of the key architects of this over her career. And her bona fides, as that was unquestioned, that's what she believed. That's what John Kerry, Barack Obama, John McCain, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, that's what they believe. That's what this debate is about. I think it's going to be very healthy. I think it's time to get it on the table. That here we're going to have a real debate about Donald Trump's America First national security policy. Raheem.
I got to say, I'm doing a great job driving this train. You hit on a lot of things there that I think we need to drill down into.
Okay, go. Let's drill.
All right. I remember.
Can we stay on schedule, or you want to go somewhere else?
Yeah, we'll keep going as long as we need to,
okay,
as long
fine.
as the John Fredericks Network allows us to.
Fine.
What you talked about is the blunting of the Trump presidency. I want to drill down into that because you're right. I mean, I was there in Midtown Manhattan Hilton Hotel. I was with you that night as well. Tonight, 3 years ago,
we had the big celebratory dinner.
It wasn't. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember certain things you said
Yeah.
to me, which you were very, very cautious about it. You said, "Look, this isn't it, right? This isn't where we stop. This isn't the great victory. This is where we start." And you reiterated it a couple of, I think it was a year later in your CPAC speech when you said, if you think they're going to give you the keys back to your country, you are sorely mistaken.
It's not about one election. We've seen that. If you think they're going to pat you on the head and just toss you the keys, say, hey,
Yeah.
what a great idea.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton's dead wrong. John Kerry's dead wrong. The establishment's dead wrong. Council on Foreign Relations dead wrong. Donald Trump and people out in rural Virginia and people in North Carolina and Michigan, and you're right. Those are the guys right. Let you do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that is what we've seen. And you talked about the moderates as well, and it's incredible. We have a general election now coming up in the United Kingdom. This whole Brexit thing causing whole amounts of consternation behind that. And the Financial Times yesterday running a whole story lamenting the withdrawal of the moderates from the front lines of the Brexit battlefield. You know, you have Philip Hammond, the former Defence Secretary and Chancellor, all of these people who are no longer standing there. This is the same thing we're seeing as well every single day, whether it's The Hill, whether it's Politico, whether it's Axios, all lamenting what happened to the moderates. Where are the moderates gone? Whither the moderates come to save us?
John Harris, I think the publisher of Politico, has been doing some great pieces, did the great piece on Warren, and then today came back with another great piece about Bloomberg, and that's what Hillary Clinton will be looking about. Where are the centrists? That a centrist could actually win here if you put forward a strong centrist program.
Right.
They're all lamenting the centrists.
And no surprise that in the Politico magazine as well, they do this whole huge 5,000-word piece on who is going to betray President Trump.
We're going to put that up on the side. Tim Alberta, who wrote the Mitch McConnell version of the GOP Civil War, Tim, actually had a great piece. Hat tip to him. We're going to get it was on the lead of Politico yesterday. Who is going to portray Trump? And it was all about the Republican moderates, correct?
It's all the moderates, and it goes through Francis Rooney and how he's just a shy and retiring guy. He never really wanted to make public statements about this, but his conscience kicked in, and he just had to say something about impeachment.
It's always the conscience.
It's never the fact that you can get your kids' advisory board positions.
This is all man for all seasons. This is man for all seasons. Every guy's Thomas More.
And although it's Politico, and it leans left, and they say themselves.
We had Lemon here yesterday. I love Politico. Well written, but it's on the left.
I completely agree. It's very well written. You've got to read this piece, ladies and gentlemen, Who Will Betray Donald Trump, because it walks you through in the House and in the Senate who are the people we can expect to be the front face on the Republican side.
This is where we're going to make them famous.
Yep.
Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam running a segment. We're running out of this. Talk up a little bit about the site before we go to break, and we're going to come back and try to catch up with everything in the first half after my rant that we didn't get to. Raheem,
I like your rants. I got to tell you, I miss the rants. The rants make the show. We have everything up at warroom.org, including we'll have your incredible speech. And I don't usually say that, Steve. Your incredible speech from the New York Young Republicans Gala the other day, where you were kind of on fire. There was a little technical hitch, I think, that just set you off at the beginning of that speech, and you just couldn't stop going. So www.warroom.org. And also, I've got to say, the podcast signups on this show right now are amazing.
Okay, we're going to jump. John Fredericks Radio Network. This is War Room Impeachment, 9 November, Year of Our Lord 2019, Episode 21. We'll take a short commercial break, pay some bills. We'll return to the War Room on Capitol Hill next.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Impeachment. 9 November, Year of Our Lord 2019. We are live from the Breitbart Embassy on Capitol Hill, just yards from the Supreme Court and the Capitol. The site of many of the most major events in this populist nationalist revolt that's taken place over the last, 7-8 years. Tea Party movement, Nigel Farage, Laura Ingraham, Senator Sessions, everybody been through this building and had dinners, conferences. Everything is kind of the intellectual driving force of one of them in a small way. And back to this, things are happening. Now we're doing a war room on the impeachment of, I think, the first populist president, the first real populist since Andrew Jackson. So this is episode 21. We want to thank the John Fredericks Radio Network for helping us launch this. There'll be a lot of other announcements in the coming days and weeks ahead of, even broader reach of War Room Impeachment. We're the only show that folks 7 days a week, one concentrated hour on the impeachment of the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. We're focused on the House. We will obviously shift to the trial in the Senate, probably sometime in January. We will be live every day, I think besides Christmas Day, and I think even that day we'll play a recording. Until the day after the acquittal of Donald J. Trump, we'll do a summary show, and then we'll move back to our normal lives. I've canceled, I think, like 10 trips, or one trip is going to take like 30 days to Europe and other places. And the reason is that this is it. This and what's happening in England right now is the whole show, because this movement kind of moves as one. We won in 2016. We were inextricably linked. The opposition, the established order, the opposition party media, and the established order. And remember, the established order is just not Democrats or the Labor Party. The established order is establishment Republicans and the Wall Street faction, and we're not singling out establishment Republicans. That's how we won. Everybody came together in 16. The Libertarians, the limited government conservatives, the neocons, the establishment Republicans, the populists, the nationalists, the MAGA movement for victory. And guess what? To not blunt the arc, to not blunt the drive of the Trump revolution, the Trump movement, because that's what this is about. We're going to all have to come together, and that's what this show is about, to highlight this. I want to turn back now to my wingman, Raheem Kassam. I'm glad you're driving the train this morning, Raheem. Doing a good job. You just all you got to do is have the producer kill the mic, and that'll be fine. I'll get back. But
Listen, I enjoy the shows. This reminds me of the old Breitbart News Daily shows, right? And by the way, that was 3 hours a morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And I would get into the studio as your quote-unquote wingman. I think I may have said 2 sentences over 3 hours. And
that was because of callers.
No.
Then we're taking callers. We provide the news, you provide the opinion. I think we're supposed to watch for it. Let's go back briefly. We're going to get to John Bolton. Anything else on the schedule? Just want the audience to know, Wednesday, it all changes, folks. We're going to be doing preview shows that Wednesday. These are public hearings. And here's why it's important. This is when the nation starts to focus. When this is wall-to-wall on TV, and it's not talking heads, it's not congressmen coming out and giving you a little bit of a thing, it's not, Raheem giving you a summary of what the testimony is. This is going to be live on national TV. I think some of the broadcasters are going to pick it up, but certainly cable is going to be wall-to-wall.
Well, absolutely. And think about why. You mentioned in the first half of the show why, Bill Taylor, William Taylor is going to be the first one up. This is a reality television show in a lot of ways, and you put the most interesting thing at the top because there's going to be an audience drop-off. This is the only thing Democrats want people to see. They want people to see Bill Taylor. They'll probably want people to see Alexander Vindman, and the rest it can all sort of peter out. They definitely don't want people to see Tim Morrison.
No, but they want the people to see the ambassador. Jovanovic, how you pronounce it? Jovanovic. They want to see her because she's going to talk about, I'm intimidated, I'm afraid. Right? She's going to sit there and say, this is the whole thing of orange man bad. Donald Trump is an intimidator. This is the play to, which I think is the untold story in the Tuesday elections, particularly in places like Eastern Kentucky. It is what is going on with the female vote, particularly what's going on with the working class female vote. That what Ambassador Jovanovic is on Friday is to talk about also her policy differences with the president. But I think she's particularly going to focus on what she perceives as the hounding of Rudy Giuliani and the president. We're going to get to all that. We had Mary yesterday, but that's where we're going to go through every one of these characters in depth, and we're going to get their testimony in depth, all that. Let's now shift to another character, John Bolton, the National Security Advisor. Big surprise yesterday in the media. Raheem, get folks up to speed what's going on with Bolton.
Well, of course, John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor for the President, was due to testify, was asked to testify, and has come to this very strange position where he's kind of teasing the Democrat Party publicly, saying, I want to do it. I've got information. He's outright said,
"Have new and let's get the quote, new and more important information." I mean, this is kind of a bombshell for Bolton to leak out there that he's got information that not an imply. He essentially says to reinforce a lot of this kind of arms for dirt narrative. Would I not be correct?
You call me out on that. I'm always the one who's saying, let's get specific,
exactly.
And then I'm trying to fudge the line. Let me get the line right.
Okay, get the line right.
Okay, so he says,
I'm helping you here, Raheem.
Thank you. I need a leg up. It's a Saturday morning. I was at a gala last night. Give me a break. Personal knowledge is the phrase used by former National Security Advisor John Bolton's legal team. Personal knowledge of meetings and conversations that have not yet been discussed in testimonies thus far. Bolton also teasing that and again, we don't know who this is being attributed to. Sources close to Bolton, he will say that Giuliani, Mulvaney, and Sondland to a degree were being disloyal to the president, so says a source close to Bolton. John will say, I was the guardrail, while Giuliani and Mulvaney were saying, let Trump be Trump. So he wants to go and do this. It's very clear he wants to go and do this. But he's making it out as if that he's a reluctant person in this whole position.
So in the headline, in the paper of record, the New York Times, or as the president calls it, the failing New York Times, Bolton dangles vital knowledge of Ukraine push. Letter to new lawmakers. Former national security aide is said to clash with Mulvaney. Is Mulvaney, Rudy, being set up here in this as the fall guys?
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. I mean, firstly, there's this ongoing, for people that want the inside baseball, there's this ongoing spat between Mulvaney and Giuliani on one side and John Bolton on the other side, and there's this
White House counsel's office.
Let's get even kind of thing going on here. And the other part of it being that, of course, John Bolton doesn't really represent, and by the way, I like John Bolton. I bump into him all the time. I like him as a human being, but he doesn't exactly represent the populist nationalist arm of the Republican Party. So there's an element of question mark over, is John Bolton reverting to hawkish type with all this?
Okay, you go back to the Washington Post. This is as the president would call it, the Amazon Jeff Bezos failing Washington Post. Headline, no doubt about it, a quid pro quo official testified. But then, this is better. This is where the Post is the best. They have the sidebar, which talks about Vindman, Colonel Vindman, who will be Showtime on prime time, and it says, in grateful service to an adopted home. Just to reinforce that Vindman is they got the Vindman as the immigrant from Ukraine. In grateful service to an adopted home.
This is the heartstring stuff,
no,
the same stuff you're seeing with Ivanovic.
This is why this is a master class in political disinformation warfare, run by Nancy Pelosi, but in cahoots with the opposition party media. I am not whining. This is fact. And if you want to defeat this, you want to beat this, Mayor Giuliani said yesterday, Giuliani is the first guy on the record to say we could stop the impeachment. Yep. I've said as sure as the turning of the earth to, and Hill reinforces this, the 2 articles of impeachment will be abuse of power and obstruction of justice. And as sure as the turning of the earth, Nancy Pelosi will bring those out of the Judiciary Committee, and they will vote on them sometime around December 19th, 20th, and 21st of this year. And it will pass by a partisan Democratic Congress. Now, Rudy Giuliani brought up the fact of the 31 Democrats who won the districts that Obama won twice. Trump beat Clinton in, and then in 2018 we lost, and Nancy Pelosi had these people never mention impeachment. Don't ever mention the I word. And Rudy says, no, it's not inevitable he's going to get impeached. This can be defeated, but you have to take those 31 down to 0. And one of the things of the show, that's what's making them famous, is we've already highlighted a couple of congressmen already in those districts. We've put their numbers up. We're going to highlight more. You're going to get to know all of them, right? Including in the John Fredericks radio network, Virginia 7 and Virginia 2 are 2 of those districts we're talking about. And those congressmen are going to have to justify the fact that they're going to vote to impeach Donald Trump on the facts that you're going to see on this Ukrainian situation, Raheem.
I want to get back just quickly to John Bolton, because this is such a major issue, and I don't think people are drilling down into this enough. There's a lot of people out there on the Republican side who still believe that the impeachment of President Trump is simply not going to happen, right? And another one of the reasons behind that is because they're not looking at the granularity of all this. They're not seeing the tick, tick, tick as days go by. They're not seeing the pieces fall into place. And that's what this show is here to do. That's what the podcast is here to do. That's what the website is here to do. Every single development that happens right now, we're throwing on www.warroom.org. And we're going to, by the end of this weekend, Steve, this is going to be news to you as well, we're going to have sections all on the site. Who are the players? What is the timeline? So that everybody can go there, one-stop shop, and understand fully what is going on with that.
You owe it to yourself. Look, the jury at the end of the day is not, the senators are just the instrument. The jury at the end of the day are the citizens of this country, Republicans, Democrats, independents, low information voters. Now you have no excuse. You're going through something. Everybody talks about, hey, if I was there in the Revolution, I would have been fighting the Revolution. If I was in the Civil War, I'd have been all engaged in that. World War II, I'd been storming the beaches of Normandy. I got it. You all would have done everything. Hey, now is the time. This is a historic. It's happened very few times in American history, and it's only happened really in times of almost crisis. So this is why this is so important. You're going to get engaged. We will provide you all the information, and we link to not just conservative sites. We link to a lot of the Hill, a lot of Politico, a lot of the New York Times, just so you get information. You have to be able to...
You need to know what the other side is thinking.
You have to know what the other side has. That's the other day we had Daniel Lippman, the senior White House correspondent for Politico. It's important to get those voices in here. You have to see that. You can't... We get too down the rabbit hole on just certain information. You're going to wake up one day with Donald Trump impeached on 2 charges, going to the Senate, and still be saying witch hunt, fake news, deep state. Hey, it may be all that. Right? It may be all that. You're going to have to come to that conclusion. But what I can tell you is reality is Nancy Pelosi is running a process here, and on Wednesday she kicks it up and takes it to the American people in a TV drama.
So let me ask you, what do you think John Bolton's game is here? Because it's different from everyone else. You know, you had Charles Kupperman, who did this lawsuit, who said, you know, we're not going to testify, but Bolton's doing something different. He's doing this. He's asking for a federal court to rule on whether or not the White House can stop him testifying. But at the same time, he's saying, I want to give this new information. Steve, what is that?
Well, look, I believe he's having it both ways. And number one, my understanding, I take this from reading, is I think it's Judge Ludick, who was because of age kind of get aged out, but was always considered the top conservative jurist and be the next slot on the Supreme Court. He was the one that said when Kupperman filed that properly argued up through the Supreme Court, and that's not going to get done in a weekend, would be, and this is his words, the most significant case we've had at the Supreme Court about separation of powers, right? This is what we're talking about. Nancy Pelosi is forcing us into a constitutional crisis over the holiday season. That's what this is, and this is a constitutional crisis now. I think Bolton, to me, I a little bit think Bolton's having it the same way. To show a little leg here, like in the New York Times.
A little leg. Bloody hell.
Show a little leg. Bolton dangles vital knowledge of Ukraine push. I mean, that's
more than a little leg.
An article.
Steve, I can see the thong.
That's an article you want to read, and it's got Michael Shear and Peter Baker. Peter Baker, the president's favorite. Peter Baker, who the president specifically calls out for fake news. Peter, just kidding, but this is the president of the United States calls Baker out. It's their names on the byline here. It's the stakes could not be higher.
Okay, so back down to detail.
Yeah.
What do the Democrats mean? So Bolton says, got to do it this way. Got to find out from a federal court whether this is applicable.
He won't be able to testify then if that's the case.
The Democrats say look to the McGahn ruling. What happened with the White House counsel that they said the White House former counsel could testify despite the White House objections?
Well, I think he voluntarily, the president sent him up to talk to. I have to check that out. The president said the president sent him up to talk to the Mueller investigation. Don McGahn spent more time there than even myself and Reince Priebus, right? And like I said yesterday, I went under subpoena. They said go. I was going, but I was subpoenaed there, subpoenaed to the House, subpoenaed to the grand jury, subpoenaed to my.
Do you think Bolton testifies?
Right now, I think not. No, I think you're going to get a lot of showing the leg like this. I don't think so. Not if it's the lawyer's set up. So I don't think it happens right now. We'll drill down on that tomorrow, and I'll get more up to speed. But I don't think from what I've seen, I don't think it happens. I think they're playing it both ways.
He's having it both ways. He's trying to show that, look, I'm trying to give you guys some stuff, but my hands are tied. And so
what
he
I don't
can turn
like,
to
what
the
I
right
don't like, what I don't like,
he can go up on that CPAC stage in February and say, I didn't do it.
What I don't like is that this is reinforcing right now, from what you're hearing, the memes that the Nancy Pelosi and the opposition party media are driving. Let's go. Did you get a chance to go through the testimony, the transcripts? The other two star witnesses you're going to see in the next coming weeks, I think it's going to be after, after the or before, right before Thanksgiving, and that week running up, are going to be Fiona Hill, who was all of these people kind of reported to her. She was in charge of the Russia, kind of Eastern Europe, Ukraine situation on the National Security Council, and Colonel Vintman was his both yesterday. Any nuggets out of there, Raheem, that you've been able to pull?
Steve, there's a reason I've been thrashing away at my computer here, and we're having some technical issues here with pulling up that right now. But we actually do have them on the site on warroom.org right now.
So we can do this tomorrow.
We can go through in great detail. But we've had
okay. Let's go to
issues.
So tomorrow we'll go through that, or Monday when you're back. Let's go through Anonymous.
Yes.
The selective leaks on Anonymous are, and I got to tell you, the anonymous person, I just don't know how this doesn't. I mean, this happened to the Clintons back in the 90s with an anonymous book that was written, I think, is a not really a biography of the campaign, or not technically. And then Joel Klein, I think he was at New York Magazine at the time, was then exposed as a writer. And the book became much more in clarity of whether it was true or not. Here, I don't know how the publisher keeps the individual's name off. I mean, essentially, you're part of a coup. If you're still working, this is what I don't understand. How are these people still at the National Security Council?
Well, let's go back.
How are these people still at the National Security Council? How are they still drawing a paycheck in the State Department? Look, if you don't believe in the program, you got other things to do. Trust me, the whole city's set up with think tanks and lobbyist organizations and law firms that keep the permanent political class fully engaged. They don't miss any of the cocktail parties in Georgetown. They never miss a mortgage payment, right? It's not like they're all taking a pay cut being in the government anyway. Why don't they just leave?
So let's go back. There'll be people who are newly engaged in politics because of what they're seeing around. They won't know what the anonymous letter was, and there are people who may have forgotten. What was the anonymous letter, Stephen? When did this whole thing start?
Well, the anonymous letter came out about a year ago now, and it was shocking. The New York Times, and this is why I fault the New York Times. The New York Times very specifically said senior administration official. I define that as either cabinet level or undersecretary or equivalent. The way I calculated, there's 80 or more people. And now I'm hearing names or potential names that don't fit those 80. This is where the New York Times has got to be held to account. If you're going to be the paper of record, you got to act like the paper of record. And number one, you published that. At the time, I was on, remember, Heilman came over here from the circus, the TV show, and we threw down on this thing. In fact, it was the episode of the circus, you go back on the thing from a year ago, I made the analogy of the Civil War in General McClellan, who eventually ran against Lincoln in 1864. There was an essentially very close to a military coup d'etat against Lincoln before the Battle of Antietam, where they thought that these Democratic generals, right, who did not want to really confront the Confederacy, wanted to have a negotiated deal, and thought that the military situation and the political situation was above Lincoln. I made the exact analogy. This is essentially the beginning. This guy, if he's a senior official, that means is one of 80. Okay, and if that's the case, he refuses to move. They're talking about working in coordination to remove a sitting president of the United States. That to me looks like a banana republic. The New York Times published that and kept the name anonymous.
What did it say?
Well, it basically
we work against the president.
Yeah, we're going to work. First off, we think he's unfit for office. Yep. He's dangerous. Yep. They mentioned the 25th Amendment. Yep. He's erratic, but most importantly, he doesn't agree with our foreign national security policy. Right? The rules-based post-war international order. Okay, that's been their fetish, and here's why. Once again, from NATO to the Persian Gulf to the South China Sea up to the Northwest Pacific, it's a series of commercial relationships, trade deals, capital markets, and an American security guarantee. Okay, what America First is, and what's different, what these guys refuse to accept, is that has made America an imperial power. We're not an imperial power. Our founders and framers were so brilliant, such a brilliant generation of men and women that fought for our freedom against the greatest empire in the world had ever seen, the British Empire, and set about with France revolutionary tendencies. Our revolution wasn't as bloody or dramatic in what had happened and what the French Revolution, or as secular as the French Revolution, but we're both in revolutionary powers, and we would not be free. It was not for the French. And what this is in the Trump Revolution is that it is to look at that international order where America has allies. NATO's got to step up and start to put more money in the till. The Germans just can't put 1% of their GDP. They've committed to put 2%. This is the whole Ukraine thing. Ukraine was forced by the guys in Brussels, the EU, that wanted to, they're obsessed with Russia. And I say, if you're so obsessed with Russia, particularly Germany, France, where's the money? Why don't you pay more for your own defense? Germany wants to have it both ways. Their biggest trading partner is Russia. They got all the natural gas deals with Russia. They got all these business relationships with Russia. But they still say, oh, this Russia is so terrible. And Donald Trump's, oh, he's awful because, he's actually trying to treat Putin potentially is trying to reunite the West to face China, Persia, and Turkey, right, which are trying to obviously consolidate the Eurasian landmass. And that Donald Trump is vilified by this. This is the beating heart of America First, where people are allies. The Gulf Emirates are allies, the littoral nations around the South China Sea, up in Northwest Pacific with Japan and Korea. And what that means is bilateral trade deals that work for reciprocity, that work for both countries. The United States is not getting ripped off anymore in these trade deals. And American security arrangements where you're putting more into the till. The Japanese are going to have to start defending themselves with America. The South Koreans are going to have to step up more. The countries around the littoral nations, India, the Gulf Emirates, and particularly NATO. You had yesterday, we brought down here the Financial Times. What's the big fight they have yesterday in Europe? Merkel and Macron going at each other. Why? Macron, the new Napoleon, right? What's he trying to do? Set up an EU army. He's trying to set up an EU army. He says NATO's brain dead because Donald Trump wants these guys to put money into the till into what is called an alliance. That is what this entire impeachment process is about. If we focus on that and expose that the permanent political class and the permanent national security apparatus, and I don't call it a deep state, folks, because it's in your grill, right? It's nothing deep about it. It's up in your face every day. Raheem.
Somebody somewhere along the line recognized, Steve, that you can make as much, if not more money on the way down as a nation than you can on the way up.
That's called managed decline.
It's called managed decline.
This is where Hillary Clinton fell into the trap about the rise of China. What the establishment in this country believed, this is the Thucydides trap. You hear about this now from Kissinger and Harvard and Graham Allison, and that is Athens and Sparta. We're the declining power. They're the rising power. And we just have to understand that we have to nudge them again. That is baloney. And Donald Trump shows baloney. Okay, we've run out of time. I got to stop these rants, man. This is getting back.
By the way, every time you do this, I'm watching the site traffic live. It goes up and up and up.
Anyway, our show's supposed to be on information, not about my rants. Okay, I want to thank the John Fredericks Radio Network. We've been on War Room Impeachment, episode 21. We'll be back live tomorrow. Jason Miller, Stephen K. Bannon. We're going to let Raheem take the day off. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Go to the site, warroom.org, for all the information about the impeachment of Donald J. Trump.